Okay, welcome back to our second lesson, literature. Hope you are doing well in this lockdown. So, in our first lesson, we saw the aspects and features of poetry. And I promised you that today I will come with one poem and I show you those aspects. So for the case of today, we are going to see what I taught you the other time. If I'm to do the review of the previous lesson, I said that for the case of aspects and the features of poetry, we have speaker. I said this is the someone speaking in the poem. Can use the pronoun like I, we, you, us, and all that. Then I talked about title, where I said that title is the same as the heading. It's the same as the heading. Then I also talked about something like setting, where I said setting can be place, can be time, can be historical. We said it can be in post-colonial, in colonial, and before colonial. Then we also talked about something like figures of speech. I said poems use figures of speech like metaphors, like foreshadowing, panning, and all that. Then we also talked about something like subject matter, where I say the subject matter is the main idea or main theme in the poem. We also talked about something like a theme, where I say that themes, they are ideas that are in the poem. Then we talked about writer, where I said that the writer is someone who writes or who has written that very poem. So for the case of today, we are going to see a poem from Ralph Rutamazire, which is titled as I Love You, My Gentle One. I love you, my gentle one. So for the case of the title, as I told you, so I will first read the poem, then after reading, I will show you the aspects, some features that we discussed the other time. So I will read as you hear. We are starting with the title. I love you, my gentle one. I love you, my gentle one. My love is the fresh milk in the rindi, which you drank on the wedding day, which you drank on the wedding day. My love is the butter we were smeared with, to seal fidelity into our hearts, You are the cattle bird's egg. You are the cattle bird's egg. For those who saw you are worthy. You are the papyrus reed of the lake, which they pull out with both hands and sing for you with tears. Because you possess my heart, I love you, my gentle one. So, this is the poem by Ralph Rutamazire. As you see, it has two stanzas. It has only two stanzas. It's a love poem from Ralph Rutamazire. So, for the case of today, we are going to see the features of the poem that are in this very poem of Ralph Rutamazire. So, number one, we said poems have title. Poems have titles, and here is the title. I love you, my gentle one. I love you, my gentle one. This is the title or the heading of the poem. Of course, we talked about title as the heading of the poem and one of the features of the poem. Then another thing we are going to see here, it is the speaker. It is the speaker. Of course, you saw there is I love you, my gentle one. I love you, my gentle one. This is the person speaking. My love is the fresh milk in the wind. I said for the case of the speaker, where we see the speaker through use of pronouns like I, my, us, and all that. So for the case of the speaker, I think this is someone who is in love, because you see the poem is full of love. So that's our speaker. Then another thing, the other time we talked about that. We talked something like stanza and lines. I think for the case of poetry, it has stanzas and lines, not paragraphs and sentences like prose. For example, as you see, it is written in stanzas and lines. It is written in stanzas and lines. These are the stanzas. It has 1, 2 stanzas. It has 1, 2 stanzas. And it has lines, not sentences, because they are short. And in poetry we call them lines, not sentences. I hope we are together on that. Then we also talked about something like theme. I think for the case of the theme, these are the ideas. These are the ideas that are in the poem. So for the case of Desirous Futamaziri's poem, I think it's all about love. I think here theme there is love. Yeah, there is love, because we see someone is saying, I love you, my gentleman, my love is fresh milk in the ravine which you drank on the wedding day, my love is butter, we are smeared with self-fidelity into our hearts. Then another point here is writer. For the case of the writer, I remember very well. I think the writer is the someone who writes the poem. And for the case of this poem, I think the writer is Ralph Tamazile. It's the one who wrote this very poem. So for the case of that, so Ralph Tamazile is the writer, as I told you, because I said it's I Love You, My Gentleman by Ralph Tamazile. Then from there we go to figures of speech. I think figures of speech, this is like style, and for the poems, they have a lot of figures of speech, and I think that's what mostly differentiates it from other literary works. For example, you see, my love is the fresh milk in the ravine. Automatically, that is a metaphor. That is a metaphor. A metaphor is the dialect. It's a dialect making similar. It's actually like similar, but it isn't, because it's direct similar making. So my love is the fresh milk in the ravine which you drank on the wedding day. My love is the butter we were smeared with. So when you want to talk about something and you want to make similarities, like to make someone look like this one, we use metaphors. So for this man saying that my love is the fresh milk in the ravine, he was comparing that very love to the fresh milk of ravine, which we call it metaphor. So that's what I mean. Of course, I see many metaphors here. You are the cattle bird's egg. You are the cattle bird's egg. For those who saw you are well. You are the papyrus reed of the wreck. Even here, he's making comparison. I think it's a direct comparison. You are the papyrus reed of the lake, which they pull out with both hands. I think with this and that. So, for the case of figures of speech, that is it. Then another thing we talked about the other time there was characters, of course. And I think in this poem, we are going to see human beings as characters. Human beings as characters. Because someone is talking about himself, how he loves the girl he's in love with. Because we see the pronouns like I, my, and all that. And then from that, we are going to see another aspect that we talked about, which is subject matter. For the case of the subject matter, as I told you, I said subject matter is the main idea. It is the main idea in the poem. What really writer was concentrating on, it is called subject matter. So when we read in this poem, I love you, my gentle one. My love is the fresh milk in the ravine, which you drank on the wedding day. My love is the butter we were smeared with, seed fidelity into our hearts. You are the cattle bird's egg. For those who saw you are worth. Love, you are the papyrus reed of the lake, which they pull out with both hands, and they sing for you with tears, because you possess my heart. I love you, my gentle one. When I'm reading this poem, in your mind, what do you think would be the subject matter? What do you think would be the main idea of the poem? Automatically, it is love. The subject matter of the poem is love. It is all about love. How this person loves his or her lover. Because it's all about love. We shall see that because he says, I love you, my gentle one. My love is the fresh milk in within the spear. My love is the butter we were smeared with. Actually, here he's talking about the love, the kind of the love this person has for the other one. And then another thing here, I think what have we talked about? We talked about speaker when I said the speaker is the someone speaking in the poem, and by the way, the speaker is different from the writer. Get that also, the speaker is different from the writer. Because the writer can be the person, but yeah, the person that writes, that's the writer, but that writer is the one who chooses someone to speak in his or her poem. So for the case of the speaker and the writer, they are different. Don't get confused on this. Then we also talked, I said the speaker is the someone really talking in the poem. I love you, my gentle one. My love is the fresh milk in the living. This is the speaker. Then for the case of the writer is someone who writes the poem, where I said it's Rolf Rutamasile who wrote this poem. I hope we are together. Then after that, we also talked about title, where I said the title is the same as the heading of the poem, where I said it is I love you, my gentle one, which is here. I love you, my gentle one. And then from title, we also talked about the figures of speech, where I said figures of speech. This is the style or the diction or the language used in the poem, where I said are full of metaphors in the poem. Where I talked about the fresh, my love is fresh milk, and I think it's direct comparison of something. That is what we call metaphor. Here I said that someone was comparing his love to the fresh milk in the ravine. Then we also talked about characters, where I said that characters, these are the people or the animals that is in the poem. Then I also talked about stanza and lines as the future of the poem, where I said that for the case of the poem, what most differentiates it from others is, if I may write here something, we talked about theme, we talked about title, we talked about speaker, we talked about title, we talked about speaker, we talked about figures of speech. Figures of speech. We talked about the writer. Then characters. Characters. Then we talked about structure. We talked about structure. Here under structure, we have lines and stanzas. Lines and stanzas. We have lines and stanzas. So, I think here you see very well. When I talked about theme. I said theme is the main, these are the ideas in the poem. We can stroke it with subject matter. Subject matter. Why I say this is the main idea in the poem of which we saw our poem was about love. Actually, it was I love you, my gentle one. Even the heading shows I love you, my gentle one. I love you, my gentle one. As I told you here, that most of the headings, or most of the title, we call it title, I said most of the titles shows what is real or summarizes what is in the poem. Here even you see, I love you, my gentle one. Even by mere looking at the title, you can guess that this poem is about love, as I told you. So this is our title, I love you, my gentle one. I said the main subject matter was love. Then for the title, it is here, I love you, my gentle one. Then the speaker, I said it is the someone speaking in the poem. Here we saw pronouns like I, my. And then we got the figures of speech. Figures of speech, I said this is the diction, use it. The diction. Then for the figures of speech, of course, I told you this is the style used in the poem, where I said this poem is full of metaphors, the direct comparison of things. Then we also talked about the writer, where we said that the writer is someone who writes the poem. Where we said the writer this time around is Ralph V. Tamazire. Then from the writer, we went direct to the structure, where I said that the structure, it is how something is built, of which I showed you that it is in stanzas and lines. In stanzas and lines. Then from structure, I think that's all we talked about. So for the case of today, I think that's what I had for you. But then you can keep on reading some poems, mostly David Rubadiri's poem. Next time I will come with David Rubadiri's poem, and we continue seeing how these features are in those poems. Please, when you're in free time, I'm going to give you an assignment. Read David Rubadiri's poem and make sure that you can tell where we are. I hope you can tell these features in those very poems. You can read and see this is the theme, this is the title, the speaker is here, figures of speech used are here, then the writer is this one, then the characters, then the structure. I think you can guess all this. You go and read all about that, and always stay safe, and please mask up, wash your hands, we are in the pandemic, and stay healthy.